Fatty liver disease is at an all-time high and it keeps accelerating. But if you search for superfoods that can heal a fatty liver online, then every single list looks basically the same. They have oatmeal, green tea, blueberries, and they say to avoid salt and saturated fat. The advice has been out there for decades, but liver disease keeps getting worse. Is the advice wrong? Hello, health champions. In this video, we're going to go over those superfood lists and we're going to explain what they get right, what they get wrong, and we're going to add 2 foods that would be at the top of my list that never made it on any other list. But what really is a superfood? Is there like a definition? No, there isn't. So it's basically a marketing term. It's something that people use to create hype. The problem is that it's often very misleading. People expect some magical properties and they think that there's just one thing that they can eat a lot of and it's going to fix all their problems. And while there are some foods that do have some slight medicinal properties that are going to be beneficial, which we're going to talk about, for the most part, all you want food to do is to support your physiology in a balanced way. So when we go through these foods, I want you to not expect any magic bullets. And we're going to talk about these foods and we're going to rank them and compare them based on if they address the root cause of disease or if they are what I call just better fish food. And we're going to introduce that analogy so you understand what fish food is. So here are the foods that you're going to find on just about every top list of superfoods. Now the question is, what is it that they get right? We're going to give some credit, but we're also going to explain specifically what do they get wrong? And most importantly, why do they keep missing the point? So we're going to go over a little analogy, and I want you to pay close attention because this is the foundation for the entire video. So here we have a lake, and this is the equivalent of your body. And then inside this lake, we have fish. And these fish are not so healthy. They're croaking. And the equivalent of the fish is your liver. So the fish is in the lake, the liver is inside your body. But then they realize that the fish is not so healthy, so now they come in and they want to try to help the fish. So they hire a consult, and this guy stands over here, and he is analyzing this, and he is coming up with better fish food so that we can give the fish a better situation, more nutrients, more higher quality fish food. But here's the problem. They're ignoring the fact that over here is a factory. And this factory is spewing out pollution, and they got a pipeline with chemicals and heavy metals, and it's running straight into the lake. And this guy is just trying to come up with better fish food to help the fish. But the question is, can we ever really get the fish healthier if we don't stop that pollution pipeline? So in this analogy, the factory and the pollution, that's the root cause. That's the thing that is causing the fish to get sick. So on the question, why do they keep missing the point? Because they don't pay any attention to the factory. And all they're trying to do is come up with better fish food. And this is what people are trying to do with their top 10 lists of food. They're just trying to come up with something with medicinal properties that are going to help the fish. But the question is, can we ever get the fish healthier? Can we ever get the liver healthier without addressing the root cause? So in order to understand what those foods are, we have to understand what is the cause of fatty liver disease. And where does it come from? Now, most people are going to suggest that the fat in the liver comes from the fat that you eat, from dietary fats. That's why every list has low-fat foods, and they say cut out the fat in your diet, cut out the saturated fat. That's how you get the fat out of the liver. But is there any foundation to that? So it turns out that the fat in the liver comes from something called de novo lipogenesis. That means making fat from scratch. That means the liver is manufacturing the fat in the liver from something that didn't used to be fat. And what would that be? It is from excess carbs that we can't use in the moment. We can't store them. We have to get them out of the bloodstream because they raise blood sugar too much. And then via the hormone insulin, we turn that carb, those carbohydrates, that glucose, into fat. That's what lipogenesis is. And insulin drives that process. We can't turn that into fat without insulin. And we're making fat especially from carbs that the liver alone can process. So there are certain carbs that the whole body can process, and there are other carbs that only the liver can do. So glucose, every cell in the liver can use glucose. However, fructose, which is 50% of table sugar, can only be processed in the liver. And here's the big thing that most people don't get, because on every food label, they say that the natural sugar is different from added sugar. That's why they list the added sugar separately, as if there was a difference. But your liver does not care if it's added or so-called natural, because the molecule is the same. And when it comes to fatty liver and dietary fat, the key to understand here is that fat does not raise your blood sugar. When you eat a stick of butter, if you were to do that hypothetically, your blood sugar is not going to go up significantly, and therefore it's not going to raise insulin. And without insulin, we can't turn that into fat. So the moral of the story is that dietary fat cannot produce a fatty liver because it doesn't contribute to de novo lipogenesis. So when they put dietary fat on every list for something to avoid, they are completely missing the point. They are completely backwards. They are plain wrong. So why do they miss the point again? Because they don't consider insulin resistance, the necessity of reversing insulin resistance, as the primary key, the primary factor in healing a fatty liver. So I'm going to put some numbers on this just to kind of give us a quantity, to quantify, to give us the scope of what we're trying to do. So I'm going to assign 70% of the importance of reversing a fatty liver to reversing insulin resistance, because it's the insulin that packs the fat in there. So if that's 70%, then what is the rest? Well, there are other causes. We're going to call those root causes, and we're going to call the rest of them better fish food. And we're going to get a symbol for that called BFF. So it's not best friends forever. It's better fish food. And the other root causes, if they address insulin resistance, if they address the root cause to some degree, we're going to assign another 25% to that. And if it's just better fish food, which is not a bad thing, the fish love better fish food. The liver loves any kind of help it can get. So it's not a bad thing. We're not saying to disregard these. We just want to get the scope. We want to see the magnitude of where they fit in. So if it's just better fish food, then it accounts for about 5%. And then we're going to also assign a little symbol if it helps also lower insulin resistance as part of this 70%, as opposed to some other signaling mechanism that helps the liver heal, then we're also going to link that back to the root cause. So let's start off with oatmeal, because it appears on just about every list to help reverse a fatty liver. So where do they get that? Well, I don't really know. They say it has fiber, which it does, but it doesn't really have that much fiber. And in fact, it's a starch, so it breaks down almost entirely to glucose, which is going to enter your bloodstream as blood glucose. Now, it's not the worst of the starches. If you're going to have a grain, then that might be the one to go with. And if you are an active person, if you're, let's say, under 50, and you are insulin sensitive, then I think steel-cut oats could be an okay or even a good food for such a person. However, if you are insulin resistant, if you have a fatty liver already and you're trying to reverse it, then all that starch is not going to help you. That starch is going to turn into glucose, it's going to spike insulin, and it will make it harder for you to recover. Now, is it better than some other things? Very often we hear that oatmeal, well, it's better than this or that. Yes, it's better than jelly beans, it's better than white toast, but it's not better than whole food meat and vegetables. So when we look at these symbols, we look at, does it address the root cause? Is it a better fish food? And does it help reverse insulin resistance, lower insulin resistance? The answer is no to all of that. So when it comes to oatmeal and healing fatty liver, we're going to dismiss it completely. Many lists also include water and say you have to drink lots of water and that'll help your fatty liver. Well, water is important. And if you add some water, it's really good if you're dehydrated. I would admit that water is important. However, having more water is not better beyond what you need. So you should drink the appropriate amount of water. You should drink until you go to the bathroom regularly and where your urine is straw colored. If it's dark, you don't drink enough. If it looks like water, you drink too much. But when it comes to a fatty liver and we look at what it does not reverse the root cause. It does not help insulin resistance. And in terms of being a better fish food, then it's what we call a rounding error. Does it have some benefit? Possibly, yes, but it's like out in the 0.01% or something like that. Number 10 is herbs and spices. And herbs and spices contain something called polyphenols that can be anti-inflammatory. The polyphenols also can help selectively feed some of the good gut bacteria, so it can help your microbiome. And turmeric is one herb, and there are some liver benefits. There's some protective benefits to the liver. And we also want to acknowledge that cinnamon can improve insulin sensitivity to some degree. But here's what we want to keep in mind. Again, with the magnitude of this, we need massive doses to get any significant benefit, to any significant impact. And when they do studies on this and they find some benefit, they usually use extracts with huge doses. So again, I'm not opposed to this. I think that you should include lots of herbs and spices because it tastes really good and there is some benefit. But again, in the big scheme of things, it is basically a better fish food. It doesn't really do anything to reverse the root cause. And out of those 30%, we can assign about 0.5% maybe to herbs and spices. So use them freely, but it's not a magic bullet. Number 9 is blueberries, which have polyphenols that again are anti-inflammatory. They can have some benefit on your microbiome, and they have indeed found benefits on the liver in studies when they use extracts. So in studies, they have found what they call directional benefits proven, like the direction is established. However, they have to use these extracts so they can administer massive doses before they see any significant impact. So blueberries are what we would call better fish food. They're not going to hurt the fish. The fish are actually slightly better off, but it does not address the root cause. And we're getting maybe 1% out of the big picture in terms of benefit from this. And again, for the people who think that superfoods are magic bullets, they might be tempted to eat the tons and tons of blueberries. And of course, now you're also getting a bunch of sugar, which is going to counteract the benefit of the polyphenols if you eat too much. Number 8 is green tea, which contains an antioxidant, anti-inflammatory called EGCG, which is a catechin. It has been proven to have some positive effects on liver tissue. They've done animal studies and the data is strong. In humans, it's much more limited, but again, they've established a directional benefit. But here's what we need to understand about green tea, that if you drink the decaf version, then that has destroyed all the catechins. So you're basically just drinking flavored water at that point. If you drink the bottled green tea that's ready to drink, now you're getting at best traces because they've also destroyed most of it. And if you drink green tea from tea bags, now some of them are going to have basically traces and some are going to be half decent. So the quality is going to vary tremendously and probably has to do a lot with price. If you get the really cheap stuff, don't count on it too much. The best ones, your best options that are actually going to have a fair amount of this EGCG are the Japanese teas, the matcha, which is where they grind the whole leaf, the gyokuro, and the sencha. Those are the best. And why is that? Because they get the most of this antioxidant because they're shade grown and they pick the young leaves. And the more expensive, the higher grades, they just pick like the tips of the leaves to get the most of this antioxidant. But now here's where you need to be really, really cautious, that a lot of these benefits have been established by using green tea extracts in studies, and they're sold as supplements. So in one capsule, you could get the equivalent of 50 cups of tea maybe, but that turns out to be an overdose because while there are some benefits, long-term use of those high doses will actually cause liver damage. So green tea again is a better fish food. You might get 1.5% benefit out of 30, and it doesn't really help improve insulin resistance at all. So, moral of the story, drink tea if you like it. You will probably get some slight benefit by using the better quality teas, and they also taste better. But again, don't expect miracles. Number 7 is coffee, which contains something called chlorogenic acid, which again is a polyphenol and an antioxidant. A lot of people have ascribed the benefits to the caffeine, and there's some slight secondary benefit to that, but the benefits from coffee we get from decaf coffee too. It also works. So the main benefit is actually from these chlorogenic acids. And in studies, coffee has been shown to reduce the liver enzymes ALT and AST, and also to reduce the risk of developing liver fibrosis, cirrhosis, and cancer. And while some studies are using extracts, there's also a lot of data on just drinking normal amounts of coffee, like 2 to 3 cups a day. And in addition to that, they've also found that coffee directly affects and improves the liver fat metabolism. So with coffee at number 7, we have the first food or drink that actually improves and helps the root cause. It actually helps the liver get better. So we're still only at about 2% out of 30 because the main thing is to improve insulin resistance. But in addition to addressing the root cause, it also addresses the insulin resistance, which makes it part of that 70%. Number 6 is extra virgin olive oil and avocado. And the fat quality in those two are basically the same. They contain percentage-wise about 75% of the fat in there is oleic acid, which is a monounsaturated fatty acid, and it has been shown that it reduces the fat accumulation in the liver. They don't know exactly what mechanisms are involved, but we do know that the more olive oil and the more avocado you eat, the more it displaces the other harmful fats that we get in the diet, such as seed oils and vegetable oils and highly processed fats. And furthermore, if you eat a ton of avocados and extra virgin olive oils like they do in the Mediterranean countries, for example, that's why they promote the Mediterranean diet so much, you're also replacing a lot of carbohydrates because you get so many calories from a good quality fat. And the carbs are what's going to turn into fat with the lipogenesis. If you eat less carbs, there's going to be less insulin and less lipogenesis. And with these low carb, high fat foods, you're also going to have a very low insulin response, not significant at all. Plus, avocados actually contain some other antioxidants and some glutathione precursors. So glutathione is your body's most important antioxidant, but it's not one that you eat. You eat the precursors and then your body makes it. It's an intracellular antioxidant. So it turns out it actually addresses the root cause of fatty livers. It's not just better fish food, and we assigned 2.5% to out of 30, plus it also contributes to reducing insulin resistance. Number 5 is leafy greens, which contains more of these glutathione precursors, so we can make more antioxidants. Plus, it contains natural nitrates, so the body can make nitric oxide and dilate and regulate blood flow better. So we can improve blood flow and circulation, which is a really healthy thing for the liver because we can get more resources, more oxygen, more blood to the liver. Leafy greens are also generally rich in folate, which is one of the main nutrients in the what's called the methylation pathway, which is one of the pathways that the liver uses to detoxify and clean things up. And of course, also to reduce homocysteine. Without folate, the homocysteine pathway gets stuck. And if the homocysteine pathway gets stuck and those levels build up, now that is an inflammatory and independent risk marker for heart disease. So folate's a good thing. It helps us keep that under control. And when the methylation pathways are working, that also helps the liver fat metabolism. It helps the liver break down and clear out fat. And even though leafy greens are a carbohydrate, they have so much fiber and water and so little carb that they basically have a zero insulin impact. And if you eat a variety of leafy greens, you're also getting a variety of fiber and polyphenols to feed your gut bacteria and improve the biome variety, the variety of bacterial species in your gut biome. And that can also help improve your metabolic signaling and your insulin resistance. So with that, leafy greens are actually definitely a component of helping the root cause, not just being a better fish food. And we get 3% out of the 30 of the other causes, plus it also helps improve insulin resistance for the other 70%. Food number 4 is broccoli and cruciferous vegetables. And here there's a compound called sulforaphane that you get from chewing it. It kind of lies there in the food latent, and when you chew it, it combines with another chemical and it makes sulforaphane. And this activates a pathway in the body called NRF2. So this pathway basically lies dormant until you chew these chemicals, and now it goes from dormant to active. So it's like a switch. It's like a genetic switch in your body. And when you turn that switch on, you're improving multiple protective enzymes and pathways in the liver and in the body. And this switch also improves autophagy, which is one of your body's most important ways of cellular cleanup. So in terms of getting this benefit and this effect, though, you want to eat the food as raw as possible. The more you cook it, the more you destroy this. So me personally, I'm not crazy about raw broccoli. So what you can do then is you lightly steam it and you serve it with a little bit of butter. That's still okay. You're going to destroy a little bit, but most of it is going to stick around. Instead, what I do is I really like different forms of cabbage. So if you slice the cabbage and you make like a coleslaw without the sugar, of course, or if you use another type of leafy green like arugula, then those are things that I really enjoy eating raw. And if you want a high dose of it, then you can go either grow or you can buy broccoli sprouts because they have like a super concentrated amount of the sulforaphane, and you can get 50 to 100 times as much. Now, keep in mind, though, a handful of that doesn't weigh much. It's like half an ounce, whereas if you eat broccoli, you might eat half a pound or more. So this food definitely contributes to handling the root cause, and I've assigned 3.5% out of the 30, plus it helps improve insulin resistance. And number 3 is fermented food and ACV, or apple cider vinegar. And how does that work? Well, they contain polyphenols, and some of them are also cruciferous vegetables, so we're going to get the benefits we talked about on the previous page. And apple cider vinegar contains acetic acid, which will slow down the gastric emptying and help reduce insulin resistance. And the fermented foods will improve the gut, and that in turn will feed forward to benefit the liver. And here we're talking about probiotics and other compounds in here, like short-chain fatty acids, that will improve the microbiome. It contains butyrate, which can help feed some of the beneficial bacteria, but also help the enterocytes, help feed and provide nutrition for the inside lining cells of your gut. It can help improve leaky gut, and it can help reduce the amount of lipopolysaccharides, which is a toxic byproduct of some pathogenic bacteria. So these foods also address the root cause, and we assign 4% out of the 30, plus, of course, they also help reduce insulin resistance. Number 2 is fatty fish and omega-3 fatty acids, the long-chain EPA and DHA fatty acids. And they have a directly beneficial impact. They reduce the triglyceride synthesis in the liver. And this is a very well-studied phenomenon. And because of that, they also reduce liver inflammation, and they help improve insulin sensitivity. And this is a signaling benefit that happens independently of eating a low-carb, high-fat diet and reducing the factors that trigger insulin. And the top choices here would be mackerel and salmon. And if you're looking for a really economical alternative, then sardines will have tremendous benefit at just a couple of dollars. And fatty fish, of course, then helps to handle the root cause of fatty liver disease. And we get about 5% out of the 30. So it's still not like one thing is going to fix it all, but you can start seeing how it starts adding up when we do several different things. And it also, of course, helps to reduce the root cause, insulin resistance. And number 1 on my list is meat and eggs. And eggs contain something called choline, which is necessary for getting fat out of the liver. It promotes VLDL export out of the liver. And VLDLs are the lipoprotein carriers that contain triglycerides. If we want to get fat out of the liver, we want to pack them into VLDLs, and that needs choline to happen. In fact, this nutrient is so critical that in lab experiments, they can create a fatty liver by simply creating a choline deficiency. They cut out the choline and lab animals develop a fatty liver. And yet, eggs don't appear on any list for foods to reverse a fatty liver. Meat contains tons of critical nutrients such as carnitine, zinc, the high-quality iron called heme iron, and creatine. And both eggs and meat have the most complete set combination of amino acids that the human body can use to manufacture glutathione, the antioxidant, but also tissues for synthesis, for making new tissues and repairing tissues. Both eggs and meat, if they're grass-fed and if they're pastured and if they're grown in a healthy manner, are very high in B12, vitamin B12. They're high in omega-3s, EPA and DHA. They are low carb. They're basically no carb. There's like a trace amount in eggs. And they are high fat. So they're very, very satiating. They're some of the most satisfying foods you can eat. And yet, these foods never appear on any lists for liver healing except here. So between the two of them, for eggs and liver, they do absolutely help reverse the root cause, we're going to assign 7% out of the 30, plus they have a major impact on helping reverse insulin resistance. So we quickly dismissed oatmeal because it has no impact. It's not the worst food for someone who is young and athletic, but in terms of reversing a fatty liver, it is even harmful. Water has virtually no impact at all. Then we talked about the first few here that are very beneficial. I would suggest eating them. I would suggest not trying to exaggerate, but it's better fish food. It will help your liver. It will provide some things that make it work better, but it's not going to change the overall situation dramatically. We get a low percentage or a fraction of a percentage, so it's beneficial, but we need more. Then we have the rest of the foods that actually start contributing and helping reverse the root cause. So the biggest impact they have is that they help reverse insulin resistance, but overall we can get maybe about 30% of the benefit by eating a good variety of these foods. And the real thing though is we gotta shut down that factory that is polluting the lake. We gotta stop the inflow of things that create a fatty liver. So if they don't help reduce insulin resistance, they're not really a significant part of the solution. If you enjoyed this video, you're going to love that one. And if you truly want to master health by understanding how the body really works, make sure you subscribe, hit that bell, and turn on all the notifications so you never miss a life-saving video.